Welcome back. Double I week here, and believe me, I am not the guy going to the Pittsburgh sports writers just to get a recap of the latest ass-kicking. This guy is a Marylander. He happens to be the Associated Press writer for all things Pittsburgh. He's also found at WNST.net back on our back pages with Penguins and Pirates and Stillers and sometimes even the Pitt Panthers. But this week was actually in Qatar and was not in Baltimore for the game on Sunday. So I find it interesting that we're grabbing Will Graves here, who's one of our frequent visitors from Pittsburgh. We welcome Will Graves in. He is Will Graves AP out on Twitter and, of course, at WNST.net on the backside of our site. But first things first, man, you were chasing Simone Biles around Qatar last week, which is why you were excused from the Steelers-Ravens game on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable. She is sort of poised to be she had a great Olympic Games in Rio. For those who don't know, gymnastics is the Olympic sport that I'm in charge with. But for the grease fire that the organization is in the wake of the scandal surrounding Larry Nestor, the dirty doctor who is now in jail, thankfully, for the rest of his life for abusing young women, she is poised to be the Michael Phelps, Usain Bolt of the 2020 Olympics. And, she is a wonder. I mean, I've known her for 6 years now, and see her sort of develop into what she may be. My friend Nancy Armour at USA Today, who was also over there with me, she wrote that Simone might be the greatest athlete on the planet right now. I'm not quite sure that I'm ready to go that far, but she is certainly in relation to her sport the greatest in relation to everybody. I mean, the gap between her and the second best people in her sport is, in my opinion, greater than the gap between any other athlete on the planet and the rest of the people in their sport. So it's pretty remarkable to watch. I mean, she won 6 medals, which is the most you can win, and she's getting better, which is crazy. And the thing that I like the most about her is she has gained a respect for her talent. And Nestor, I'm sure you've been around a lot of athletes. I know you've been around a lot of athletes, and some of these guys are phenomenally gifted, and they do not take the full advantage of it. I mean, they don't, and because their talent kind of gets them by. And
or they don't have the head for it. I mean, let's be honest. If you're going to be that special, that much better, it's about your head. It really is. I mean, for the Tiger Woods, the Tom Brady, whoever, the LeBron James, you don't do Michael Jordan. You're not doing that without something special there and some special ability to focus and be disciplined in a way that whoever's number 2, yeah, they do a great job, but they're number 2. You're number 1.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that I think she has developed, especially, and she has talked about it. I've developed a pretty good relationship with her over the last 5 years. And, going up to Rio, she basically had the same program in place like the last 18 months that was designed for her to win, but not necessarily do what she could do. They wanted to make sure that she won. And this program, when she took a year off after Rio, and when she came back, she told her parents, she's like, "Look, this is my call. This is my ship now. This is what I'm doing." And she got a new coach because her old coach took a job in another state. And she said, "Let's see what I can do." And she does things that literally male gymnasts can't do, which is not the way it's supposed to work. It is remarkable. I mean, she will go down as one of the all-time greats in Olympic sports history, I'm pretty sure. And and the flip side of that is she's also she's 21 now, which is not old for a gymnast, but it's getting up there. But because of that, she has more freedom. She's aware of the sway that she has within the sport. And when you look at some of the changes, the positive changes, USA Gymnastics has made in the last 18 months, and there have been a few, she has been sort of at the forefront of all of them. So she's got it on both ends.
I just want to reset.
I mean, it's just remarkable to watch.
Will Graves is here. He's from the Associated Press. He's in Pittsburgh. I actually called to talk some Ravens Steelers, but I'm fascinated by this Simone Biles conversation. And she usually runs around at the Super Bowl and Radio Row, so I've seen her run. I see her size. But what you witnessed in Qatar will be the most courageous thing that she's done, right? She might win more medals. She probably will win more medals if she stays healthy, right? And she's won medals in the past, and she'll go on and be whatever Mary Lou Retton was to me 2 years ago when she stopped by in Houston at the Super Bowl, and I was all gaga. I still think it's one of the best segments I've ever done on the radio with Mary Lou Retton. We had so much fun together. So, we witnessed this, and for most Americans, it comes out of every 4 years, it comes out for a month, and we light a torch, and we all wear red, white, and blue and watch it, and they're all new names. You're a little deeper into this, but certainly for gymnastics and Larry Nasser and what's going on there and the aftermath of all of this, and even last week, the press conferences that are being held here. Run me through where the sport is right now, because it really has been run through the mud a little bit, right? I mean, going back to Bella Caroli through all of these years, and the figure skating's had its Nancy Kerrigans and Tanya Hardings and whatever, but this scandal is, it's right up there with the Catholic Church as far as heinous things that were going on sort of systematically that there's been an incredible cover-up of, and the parents are pissed, the girls are pissed, but I don't know if there's ever going to be justice, but I think they're making sure this doesn't happen anymore, right?
Well, they are attempting to rectify the mistakes of the past. However, the United States Olympic Committee this week went out and said, you know what, we're going to start the process of decertifying USA Gymnastics as the national governing body for the sport, which means would create sort of a Wild West atmosphere in terms of determining who makes the Olympics. Because right now everything funnels through USA Gymnastics. They pick the Olympic team, and they're going to create a new organization at some point. But what that's going to look like, who's going to be involved in it, what the structure is going to be. You got 2 years before the Tokyo Olympics, and this is not going to be done in a day. So it's going to be very much the sport in the United States at the elite level is still very much, going to feel the aftershocks of this for years to come. And what sort of sucks about it, if I can be real personal. I mean, there are people, USA Gymnastics is based in Indianapolis, Indiana. It's 50, 60 people in an office building. And you know what? That building has tech guys and accountants and human resources people that have, video crew people that couldn't have picked Larry Nasser out of a lineup the day that he was arrested by Michigan authorities 2 years ago. And now they have to wonder what their jobs, if they're going to have a job in 6 months, as sort of because of the poor decision making by very, very few people in leadership there. And I'm not trying to equate like what they are facing versus what the women that were abused by Nasser are facing. I'm not trying to say that's the same, but I am saying sort of the ripple effects of this thing when you really draw it out is sort of staggering. That being said, they should thank God every day Simone is around, because if she wasn't, I think she at least offers a beacon of hope, and because she is embracing her role as a spokesman for the sport, I think her influence will sort of play a major factor in making sure that whatever comes after this is better equipped to provide a safer and more positive culture for the athletes at the elite level, and also for the parents. I mean, and it's weird. I mean, look, I have a daughter. She's 7. She started, gymnastics this fall. She started about a month ago, and she enjoys it, and she just likes to go and tumble. But I talked to the owner. I interrogated her for like an hour and a half to figure out what her safety precautions are and what she's following and what she's not following, and how her coaches are background checked and all that stuff. Which is something, when my sister in the 80s, and she was a gymnast for 10 years, my parents didn't do that. They went in, they rolled in, they signed up. They signed her up, and off she went, and she had a good experience. But, that's just where we're at now. It's just a totally different culture. And I think, in a way, that's not a bad thing. Maybe there will be some good to come out of the Nasser stuff in terms of if the organization changes. But it's tough. I mean, I'll give you one last thing on this. I was talking to Simone's old coach a while ago, and we were talking about how the Carolis, Marta Caroli could be really tough. She ran the program, but she won a lot of gold medals. She could be I saw it firsthand. And nobody spoke out and said, Marta, why are you so tough? Borman, Simone's old coach, said to me once, well, sometimes, yes, you realize you're coaching 15, 16, 17-year-old young women, but the flip side of that is you're also coaching world-class athletes. So how do you coach a world-class athlete that also happens to be a person who's still developing both, physically and emotionally and mentally? And sometimes, you've got to be a tough coach. So how do you do that while also realizing that you're not talking to a 25-year-old man? And that, I think, is sort of the challenge within the sport. And that's not just related to gymnastics. I mean, swimming's had issues, diving's had issues, wrestling has issues, taekwondo has issues. I mean, this didn't happen in a vacuum. And I think there is a reckoning of sorts on some levels on how these sports are going to be run going forward. Because I am sure every other Olympic sport, there's 42 other, Olympic sports that fall under the USOC umbrella. I'm sure they are all watching what is happening with USA Gymnastics and thinking, I don't want that to happen. And so, again, that might be part of the ripple effect in terms of how maybe the just Olympic sports in this country will be handled going forward, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Well,
End of rant.
There's a lot of all of that. Will Graves is here from the Associated Press in Pittsburgh. Eventually, we're going to get to some Ravens and Steelers, but the final wrap on that would be, hey, dude, you're a Marylander. You know what's happened down at College Park the last couple of weeks when you're not handling your business soup to nuts, front to back, with no lies, no behind door, any of this, or no, we're not going to tell the police what happened, right? There was a lot of that went on in gymnastics, a lot of that went on at Penn State, now at Maryland, that you do find out that when something happens and the light comes out and the journalism to some degree comes out on all of this stuff and the stories come out, it can wreck a lot of lives. To your point, there's a ripple effect to all of this, and anybody near the Maryland thing here would tell you that. Will, I called you to talk some football, and at first, did you ride a camel in Qatar? I need to know that before we move.
I did not. You know what's really weird? I mean, I was apprehensive about going out there a little bit. I'd never been to the Middle East. I've been to a lot of places, thankfully, but not to the Middle East. You know what? I mean, at least in Doha, which is where I was at, it's pretty much like every other major city I've been to.
I've had friends tell me it's more like Vegas, like the weather.
Dude, there was a Ponderosa in Qatar.
We don't even have those in Baltimore anymore, man.
Right. I mean, there was a massive mall, near the arena, and with a food court that had, 20 different places in it, including, a Hardee's and a Cheesecake Factory. I mean, you could have taken that mall and put it in Towson. I mean, you could have replaced Towson Center or whatever it's called. It's been a while since I've been up there. But, yeah, I mean, it was pretty normal. Just you were around people that were, what a mix of people. I mean, there was one night I had we were eating dinner at a restaurant on the Persian Gulf, and the table next to us, literally 5 women with 5 different ethnicities sitting there talking in English and having a good time, and it was just sort of. I mean, I'll be honest with you, that's just not something I see a lot of here.
You don't see that at the Pittsburgh airport often. I understand that.
No,
yes.
You don't. And so that was, it was just an interesting people. I got followed once. I knew I was being followed, but it lasted half an hour, and then the guy disappeared. I guess he figured I was harmless. But it was, it was interesting. I'm not going to say I'm going to book a ticket to go back anytime soon, but it's an experience I'm glad I had. But anyway,
you were followed? Explain that to me. I'd like to know that.
Well, one of the reasons they sent me over there was, it was to follow Simone around. But Qatar, as you know, is preparing for the 2022 World Cup. When they got the bid in 2010, it raised a lot of eyebrows. They obviously have a lot of human rights issues they're trying to work out. I met chiefs when I was over there. Okay, I met guys that know guys. The guys that know the guys that killed Khashoggi is what you're telling me. Yes. I'm not saying those guys, but had I run afoul of whatever protocol or what, I would have, who knows? I'm not saying I feared for my safety, but it was very unusual. Anyway, so we were in one of the stadiums, me and this Brit who has been hired by the Supreme Committee for the World Cup to this guy's job is to basically take Western journalists around and sweet talk us, right? But we made an unscheduled visit to one of the stadiums, and there was a guy who, this Brit's showing me around, but this guy, he appeared to be of Indian descent, and he literally we went in all the nooks and crannies of the stadium. He didn't tell us his name. He didn't tell us what he was doing. He just followed us the whole time. It was kind of weird.
Will Graves is
anyway.
back. Thankfully, you're back on terra firma. I mean, it's not really America, it's Pittsburgh, but you're there, and he's there with the Associated Press. He covers all things Penguins and Pirates and Steelers. Look, I got to piss on the Steelers a little bit here. I mean, 4-5, our season's in the tank. We're bye week
What are
in
they
here.
talking about firing Harbaugh? And by the way, for your listeners, I'm sure your listeners are aware of, if it can wait until Sunday, it's not news. These guys that go on these shows on Sunday morning and they have sources, whatever. If they had news, it would be news. It's news when it happens. It's not, I'm going to say this for Sunday. I mean, is he really in trouble? He can't possibly really be in trouble, can he?
He's very much in trouble at the end of the year if they finish 7-9. I think that would be the end of his ride here, along with Flacco, quite frankly. I would say that the Steelers game, and I said this all last week, is the most important game that they were going to have. A 4-4 home game against the Steelers where they could sweep the season, where they could get back in it, where they could be 5-4, where they could be feeling good about themselves with Cincinnati coming around the corner, and some, a couple of cream puff games. They got Oakland, Cleveland, Tampa Bay still on their schedule. They have to go to Kansas City. They have to go to Atlanta. They have to go to San Diego or wherever the hell the Chargers are playing Carson at this point. So, that's the schedule. But now that this game is lost, they're in the position they were in last year, which is 4-5. And now they have to win Cincinnati, or otherwise we're going to start to see, well, here's the Lamar experiment, and where are we going? And, Ozzy's leaving at the end of the year, Will. So Eric DeCosta's taking this thing over. Bisciotti sat at the press conference last year in January and said he thought about, removing Harbaugh, but then thought the better of it. I've never believed they were firing John Harbaugh during bye week. I don't think it's the way Steve Bisciotti conducts his business. I think that's the way the Browns and the Davis family do business. That's not the way Steve Bisciotti's going to do things with a Super Bowl winning head coach. But I do believe at the end of this year, if this team doesn't make the playoffs, that's 5 out of 6 years you didn't make the playoffs, Will.
Right. I don't know. I just have a lot of. Our dealings with him, I have a lot of respect for him and what he does, and the way he runs, he conducts himself and the team. And a lot of people and the Steelers hate the Ravens, but I think there is they have respect for the Ravens. There's a lot of respect in Pittsburgh for Baltimore, for the ownership and the way they run things. And they might not like the knockdown, drag out fights, but there is just an admiration there that you certainly don't find with like the Bengals, who are just as much of a pain in the butt to the Steelers from a antagonistic standpoint as Baltimore is, but conduct itself kind of it's amateur hours.
Well, the Steelers
right?
and the Bengals hate each other. I mean, like really
right.
hate each
And
other.
the Steelers and the Ravens hate each other for 3 hours, and then and then it's sort of like, man, that was intense and awesome, and one of the reasons we like to play. I will say this: the only thing that sort of baffles me about what's going on with the Ravens is if you're going to put Lamar Jackson in the game, you've got to do more with him. Like they've got to, and I know he threw it, once or twice on Sunday, I think. You've got to do more with him in the game because teams, and you saw the Steelers were not fooled in the red zone when he was in there. And then except there was that one play, that he ran out and Flacco missed him out when he ran across the field in motion and was out in the flat.
That's a big play, by the way, because it's the quarterback's job to see a wide open wide receiver, no matter what his name is. So
right, but they got to get some. But there was also the drive there in the third quarter where they're coming down, and they it's 3rd and 4 from the 5 or something like that, and he gets the ball and he runs off to the right, and Mike Hilton stops him, and they have to kick a field goal. I mean, that's just the guy won a Heisman Trophy. He can throw the ball. If he's your quarterback of the future, I would think that we're deep enough into this thing that you've got to give him more packages to show what he can do, because if not, smart teams are just going to start teeing off on him. So.
Well, the offensive line's been a problem here, the running game, which has been non-existent through halfway, but the defense, that's the difference. I mean, the defense traveled up to Pittsburgh and just beat your team up. This time around, it didn't go that way. And the across-the-middle thing and where we are with Weddle and Jefferson and their career and coverage and the back end and Jimmy Smith and his health and Marlon Humphrey and his health. Health has become an issue around here, which means depth becomes an issue. And what we've seen the last month around here just hasn't been good enough, Will.
Well, it certainly, yeah. I mean, I think I remember when I was on before Baltimore came up here. I think I said I thought the Ravens would win, and they were excellent. And then it seems like and for whatever reason, whatever was working has stopped working, which would be troubling. I mean, defensively, I look back at that first meeting. I think that Randy Fichtner, the Steelers' offensive coordinator, got scared. He didn't give the. I mean, it's a tie game at halftime, with the Ravens go and kick a field goal to start the second half, and he got away from James Conner almost immediately. And obviously, when you look what the Steelers have done over the last month, they have stuck with him because he's a guy that, he's not going to be a guy that's going to get you 7 carries for 57 yards and be effective. He needs 18 to 22 carries if you really want him to be a productive player. And what you've seen over the last month, they've been able to do that. I mean, they have given him the ball, and which allows the offense to stay on the field and keep the defense, which statistically looks better because they're not. I think they've only averaged 54 snaps against over the last 4 games because the offense is holding the ball so long. So I really think that's helped, and I think Fichtner's as a play caller, this is his first year after replacing Todd Haley. He's starting to figure out what he has on his hands, and I think their game plan against the Ravens was much better than it was the first time out too. So that being said, I'm not going to sit here and say the Steelers are back to being one of the AFC's elite teams. I still think the defense is going to be suspect. The schedule is not great. I mean, they have the Chargers, they have the New Orleans, they have the Patriots, they have a game in Jacksonville on a Sunday night. They got to go to Oakland, which sounds like, okay, whatever on paper, except they've won there once in like 15 years, no matter how bad the Raiders have been. I mean, Terrell Pryor beat them one year with a 91-yard run when he was a quarterback. So the team is, but things have calmed down. It's not, Antonio Brown hasn't been sued in a month, so that's progress, right?
Well, but the Le'Veon Bell circus is going to come back to town, right? I mean, that's going to come in like a late fall regatta, isn't it?
I mean, I think that everybody just wants this to just be over. It's he's back in Pittsburgh. There was social media footage that surfaced this week of him playing pickup hoops at a LA Fitness when he loves to play basketball. I think if you had to ask him which sport he'd rather excel at, he'd tell you basketball.
Well, the funniest quote of the year is Tomlin, right? We need volunteers, not hostages.
Well, I mean, and I think that's sort of a note that, when he does show up, he's going to be, at least initially, in a supplemental role to James Conner, who has earned the right to be the feature back for now. I mean, I think the Steelers' best case scenario, if they want to play deep into January, is to have both those guys available and it's in Le'Veon's best interest to be in tremendous shape. The thing about this is, and I think I mentioned this to you last time, I like Le'Veon. I found him to be personable and somewhat intelligent, and sort of the way that he's played this is, I think everybody up here is just sort of mystified at this point. I mean, he's sacrificed $7.7 million already.
It's going to go down as one of the dumbest decisions in NFL history in regard
and this is guaranteed money. So how's he going to recoup that on the open market when he's played half a season of football? And it's really going to be less than that because, I mean, when he does come back, I would imagine it would be at least 2 to 3 weeks before he's anywhere close to looking like the guy that you're used to seeing. So now we're talking post-Thanksgiving probably because he has to sign by November 13th or he sacrifices he doesn't get that year of accrued service time, which means he can't be a free agent next year, which is crazy. So, and there's literally a
and the Steelers don't want him, right? I mean, they
don't need him, and if they can get him off the books, if you got James Conner who's scheduled to make like $1.7 million, it's a 3rd-round pick, scheduled to make $1.7 million next year, and his numbers this year are almost identical to what Le'Veon's were through the first 8 games of his second season in the league in 2013. If you can save $12 million off the cap and go plug needs elsewhere like middle linebacker or inside linebacker, then yeah, you do that. So the team's mad. I mean, he has been communicative with his teammates, which is when everybody thought, initially he'd show up for the first week of the season, and then he didn't, and they were mad. And even this week, guys still don't know when he's going to show up. And I think they're just they feel disrespected because of it. And, I mean, they're all about the business. They understand the guys want to maximize their earning potential, and they're never going to be mad about that, but they view his lack of letting them in on what his plans are as a sign of disrespect, especially for the guys that block for him.
He is Will Graves. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's not, so who knows? I mean, but I think everybody just wants it to be over. He's going to be vilified whenever he steps back on the Heinz Field, and you know what? If he busts off a 45-yard touchdown run, then people will forget. That's how it goes.
Well, I'm sorry I missed you last week. I'm glad that we had all this Qatar and Simone Biles. I mean, it's been a great bye week conversation with you, and I don't know where we take the Ravens here, and your thoughts on Harbaugh and Flacco and Jackson are interesting, but for the division itself, it's been fascinating, right? Like back in August, we would have said these teams were all sort of drawn together along the polar lines of 7-9, 6-10, 8-8, wherever it was going to be. We might have even have said that when we got together in Pittsburgh a month ago. Now all of a sudden it looks like it's going to be the Browns being 12-1 or whatever it's going to be for them if they can get to 3, and it's going to be the Ravens being maybe not in the playoffs. They're a sub-500 team right now, and then there's Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. So that still looks to be a slobber knocker in this division unless the Ravens can claw their way back in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, the interesting thing was when the Steelers did get off to that bumpy start, I did a story. I think it was after the Ravens game about isn't this what you guys do? I mean, under Tomlin, you sort of are not great in September. I think his record in September is pretty close to 500. And then you look at the rest of the season. I mean, he's in October. They're like 33-14.
Dude, it's probably It's probably 800 after that. Like literally, because it's so bad, right?
And I went around and I said, "Do you guys take any solace in knowing that you guys have traditionally got it together?" And it doesn't matter. Each year is a new year. That's what they say. And then literally yesterday, Ben was like, well, we sort of laughed when you guys were talking about us panicking because we know that we always tend to get better as the season goes on. So I was like, whatever, dude. It is, this is sort of their MO. I'm sort of with you.
I don't know that this is the team that's going to go to Jacksonville or Denver in a couple of weeks and be lousy. I don't.
I mean, you'd like to think they've gotten the bad football out of the way. I mean, I think the only really, truly terrible game they played was the Browns game in the opener, where they turned it over 6 times in the rain and blew a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter, and had their All-Pro kicker miss a kick that he makes in his sleep.
Well, the Ravens dominated them, but it wasn't.
Right.
But they got even.
Deserved to win that game.
Absolutely. It's 1-1 as you probably would have drawn it up in April. Maybe it would have been reversed. And what difference does it make at this point? It's really about how healthy you are, how well you're playing in November, right here, right now. And I don't like anything about my team. And having watched your team play, I'm like, typical Tomlin, typical Roethlisberger. I mean, he even had his diva moment in the game. He went over to Saul, he laid down, and he took a rest, and he thought about things, and he went off for a whole play or two, and then he came back. So,
and they come in, and you know what? I mean, you got to give credit to Fickner. I mean, Josh Dobbs comes in. Literally, it's his first real action, and instead of handing the ball off on 2nd and 20 at the 5, he throws the ball down the field. I mean, this is a guy that if you had asked us on August 31st, we'd been like, he's going to be out of a job because they're going to keep Landry Jones and Mason Rudolph. And, it is Marcus Gilbert, their right tackle, has been out for a couple games. They got Matt Filer, who's like a swing lineman, basically a plug-and-play guy. He's been really good. And this is a guy, another undrafted guy that these Steelers just seem to find. I mean, literally, they started 3 guys. They get DeCastro and Pouncey, who were first-round picks. And then you got Ramon Foster, Alejandro Villanueva, and Matt Fowler, all who undrafted guys. And that group has allowed 2 sacks in 4 weeks. That's pretty good. Maybe Mike Munchak deserves another shot at a head coaching job somewhere. Just a heads up to people.
All right, look, man, I'm not going to talk any hockey with you. I don't want to talk any Penguins.
Too early. November, my threshold is like post All-Star break. I can do it, but it's just, I think the Penguins actually play at the Capitals this week, and, people here panicking because they lost 3 in a row, and, I mean, come on.
Hey, man, the Washington Capitals got rid of their Stanley Cup winning head coach, who happens to be my dear friend, and they're looking up at him in the standings to the lowly New York Islanders. So I'm on the Islanders bandwagon. I'm going to get me a Gordon Fisherman's sweater here at some point and fire that up for Trotzy. Dude, my best to you. I'm sorry we don't get together more often, but I will darken your doorstep sometime around Christmas to try to figure this out when the Steelers and the Bengals get together on the 30th of December, and we'll figure out who's figuring what at them. But I will not be eating Mr. Rooney's cookies at Christmas this year. So for that, I will be in Southern California with my family looking at palm trees. So I'm happy about that.
Well, that's a trade-up. I mean, the cookies are okay, but California is a little bit sweeter. So anyway, I do appreciate it. I'm around. If you want to talk gymnastics or otherwise, I'm always your guy, too. So
Will Graves is one of my dear buds up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. By the way, can you give a plug for what? Because you're on your Twitter. You always talk about cancer and blood donation, and I know cancer has greatly affected your life as I see your kids here wearing their Clemente gear looking out over Point State Park on your Twitter.
Yeah, I have a form of lymphoma called Waldenstrom's macroglobular anemia, which is a mouthful. It's a blood disease. Basically, there's a protein that develops and jacks up the blood. It's red blood cells in my bone marrow, and over the course of time, and I'm talking years, it basically suffocates you very slowly. It's incurable, but it's treatable. I'm currently going through my second bout with it. I had a bout with it in 2014 and 15 and went away for 2+ years. It came back over the summer. I'm finishing up, still undergoing treatment, but it's looking promising. It's just going to be one of those things where every couple of years I'm going to have to go in for an oil change, basically. I'm lucky this time that I did not need blood transfusions. I needed many blood transfusions the first time. But because I get checked regularly, we caught it earlier, but I'm very passionate about educating people and my wife and I had a discussion about this last night, actually, about blood donation. I mean, it's heartwarming. And the response in Pittsburgh to what happened at the Tree of Life, and not just the community outpouring in terms of just emotional support, but people going to blood banks and donating blood in the aftermath of that. I mean, terribly moving. And but selfishly, as a guy who advocates and does stuff with the Red Cross and some other blood organizations that also use trafficking blood donations, there are people every day. This blood is used all the time.
Brother, you don't have to tell me. I sat in the hospital 155 nights with my wife, and every night a bag of platelets or a bag of blood came in to save her life.
Right.
So, it's just it's sobering to talk to you about it 3 years later, because I haven't said a word about it on the radio in that way in a long, long time. So I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah, so I appreciate people overcoming whatever fears or stigmas. And I understand it's not necessarily a comfortable process to go and sit there and get jabbed with a needle and lay down for half an hour and have them take blood out of your body. But as seeing people on the other end, I sit in a treatment center and I'm pretty healthy. If you saw me, I think when I walk in, people are like, what the hell is this guy doing here? But I sit there and I talk to folks, who are undergoing treatment for different forms of cancer that are, there was a woman I was talking to a couple weeks ago. She had, she's got stomach cancer, and she was kind of outlining all the stuff that's happened to her, brain cancer. I see these people, they need blood just as badly, no offense, as victims of mass tragedies in this country, because this cancer affects people in a far larger number than most about anything else. And it would be nice if we could sort of find a way. I hope people that came and donated blood for the Tree of Life stuff, I hope that they thought, well, this process isn't that bad, and realize that their blood is being used and is vital. And so I am passionate about it because I donated before I got sick. I didn't think much about it, and I'm sure your wife probably had this thing too. I can never donate again for the rest of my life because what I have is technically never going to go completely away. When you get that blood, when you're on the other end of it, it is staggering. The feeling of great gratitude and sort of helplessness, because this is literally keeping you alive. When I got diagnosed, I came back from covering the Olympics in Russia in 2014. I told my wife I wasn't feeling well. I went to my PCP. We had blood work done. Next day, his nurse calls me. So she's like, drive to the hospital right now. And literally, I didn't get a Tylenol. I was in the hospital 3 days. I didn't get a Tylenol. Instead I got 9 units of blood. And I walked out and I felt like $1 million. And I had that process repeat itself in smaller fashions where I get 1 or 2 or 3 units at a time during the initial days of treatment. And you walk in there and you sit there and think, man, somebody else was on the other end of this and took time on their lunch break, or, on a Saturday or at the blood drive at the fire hall or whatever, and sat down and, got their free Cheez-Its and their little juice thing and gave something from their body to keep my body alive. And when you are on the receiving end of that, when that literally keeps you alive, it is indescribable. Like, I'm not much of a humble guy, but I have never been more humbled in my life than I was sitting there in the times that I've sat there in the hospital, having literally the lifeblood of other people pumped into my body so that I can keep going and be, a provider for my family. And, it's just, and I'm sure your wife sort of has similar feelings. And it's, while I appreciate the outpouring after things that happened at like a Tree of Life or whatever, I just wish that it'd be great if that support was more sustainable for those organizations.
Oh, I understand.
Going forward.
The amount of love we felt in the backside of both my wife's diagnoses, I wish that were every day, that we walk out into the world here in November and everyone's just nice and magnanimous and checking in on you. But that doesn't happen the day after an election day. So, and obviously what your community has been through over the last couple of weeks. And, hats off to you and what you're doing and your good word. And we'll continue to spread it. And I'll bother you more often. All right? There we go.
All right.
And I hope it's because the Steelers are losing. Tell Tomlin I said hello, and tell him what was the quote? Tell him I'm a volunteer, not a not a hostage.
I will, dude. Have a good one.
See you, man. Will Graves, AP, the way to follow him. You can also see him out at WNST.net, cancer survivor and living with that. And you can follow his work out at WNST.net on the backside. Pirates, Penguins, obviously a lot of gymnastics and Olympic work as well out of the Fighting City of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which I'm going to be nice to this week because it's just how I'm feeling right now. Nasty at WNST.net is still my email address, however. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Anything you miss, you find out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.